Tell you about what authority I do these things. Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin? And they argued with one another. If we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe him? But if we say of human origin, we're afraid of the crowd, for all regard John as a prophet. So they answered Jesus, we do not know. And he said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I'm doing these things. What do you think? A man had two sons. He went to the first and said, son, go and work in the vineyard today. He answered, I will not, but later changed his mind and went. The father went to the second and said the same, and he answered, I go, sir, but he did not go. Which of the two did the will of his father? They said the first. Jesus said to them, truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you did not change your minds and believe him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
This paper's a little moist out here today.
Now, why did I do that? Because
They're on now.
we want to be able to hear.
Okay.
So now what we're going to do is mute our.
Perhaps the most important factor in this passage today is that it takes place in the temple in Jerusalem. The previous day, Jesus entered the city on a donkey, Palm Sunday. So this is Jesus' last week. He's in the temple. On that Sunday, he headed straight to the temple, to the center of Jewish religious life, where he overturned the tables of the money changers, much to the glee of the blind, the lame, and the children. After spending the night outside the city, he went back to the temple the next morning, and those in charge of the temple were still reeling from that outrageous display the previous day. They were in no mood to coddle this countryside rabbi. The chief priest asked, by what authority are you doing these things? Now that is a very reasonable question. Their own authority was given to them by God in the time of Moses and passed down through the generations. If Jesus' authority was from God, they could easily refute that on biblical and traditional terms. They thought they had Jesus in a trap. How would he explain the authority he has? Jesus, however, turns the tables and asks them a question. Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin? That's a thorny question, because it's not only concerning John, but also concerning Jesus. In the exchange, the interviewee becomes the interviewer. Now, it's easy for us to sit here and judge the chief priests and elders because we know the story. We can point a finger at them. However, when we point a finger at anyone, often three fingers are pointing at us. What if we put ourselves in the shoes of the chief priest? What if we ask ourselves, what do we do to keep things as they are and not change? The question of authority is paramount to the religious leaders. It may be so to us too in our day when we look at our attitude towards others in our community. How often do the people that have been here a long time in the church get upset when new members come in and they take over leadership responsibility? What happens when new ideas are presented and acted upon? What happens if the Sunday liturgy is changed at all? It is really not so difficult for us to put ourselves in the place of the chief priest and the elders. The parable Jesus tells of the two sons relates exactly to those leaders. The first son, who appears to be very mouthy and rebellious, answers, "I will not go." But he changes his mind and he goes. The other son appears to be dutiful and obedient and answers, "He will go," but he does not go. And then Jesus asks the chief priests and rulers, "Okay, which son did the will of the Father?" And they said, "The first." According to the parable, those who seemingly are in the know are not the ones who do the will of God. Jesus announces then that the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom ahead of you. Now, tax collectors and prophets occupy the lower rung of the Jewish social and religious ladder. Most often in the gospel, tax collectors and tax collectors and prostitutes often are just a common way of saying sinners. They're the opposite social extreme from the chief priest and the elders. Now, it's not uncommon in churches to hear people discount others they deem as unworthy. Churches have struggled with this since the beginning of the church. Do Gentiles have to be circumcised? Are women allowed positions of leadership? Are people of other races and skin colors really made in the image of God? What about homosexuals? What about mentally ill? What about the homeless? The question may be, who will I stand beside in the kingdom of God? If you've ever been to a Benedictine monastery, you know at every monastery there is a monk that's in charge of hospitality. According to St. Benedict and his monastic rule, brothers are to welcome all as Christ. Who belongs to God's kingdom has everything to do with who God is and who is beloved by God. But there's something very important in this passage about changing our minds. The first son changed his mind, then went into the vineyard. The tax collectors and prostitutes believed that John the Baptist came in the way of righteousness. But the chief priests and elders would not even change their minds even after seeing all those that believe. What causes us to change our minds? What allows our hearts to be changed, to be broken open? What blocks us from allowing ourselves to be changed? These are the questions at the heart of the matter. Which son do you resemble? Are we all talk? Are we people who put our faith into action? Do we see now that when you ask Jesus a question, we can get put on the spot?